The story of the mysterious Circleville Letters began in the quiet town of Circleville, a peaceful American community where everyone knew each other.
Neighbors waved from their porches, and secrets rarely stayed hidden for long, yet sometime during the late 1970s, that calm atmosphere was shattered
By something far more terrifying than violence itself, because whoever was responsible never needed to show a weapon, never needed to break into homes, and never needed to attack directly. All they needed was a pen, paper, and information they should never have known, and before long,
The residents of Circleville would discover that the most frightening enemy is often the one who watches silently from the shadows while knowing every detail of your life.
it started when local school bus driver Mary Gillespie began receiving strange anonymous letters in her mailbox, typed and handwritten notes accusing her.
The letters contained deeply personal allegations involving members of the local community, drawing attention not because of strong
But because the writer seemed to know intimate details about her personal life, her schedule, the roads she drove, and even conversations she believed nobody else had heard, and at first Mary ignored the letters, hoping they would stop if she refused to react. But they kept coming relentlessly, one after another,
each becoming more aggressive and personal, and soon her husband Ron Gillespie also began receiving letters warning him that everyone in town knew about Mary's alleged affair.
urging him to stop her before the truth became public, yet the writer never identified themselves, never made mistakes, and never revealed how they gathered such disturbing information.
And as paranoia spread inside the Gillespie household, the fear became unbearable because every single day another envelope could arrive carrying new accusations.
New messages continued to appear, along with signs that someone nearby remained closely aware of their daily lives. Over time, he told people he believed he knew who was behind the letters, though he never publicly revealed the name, and then on a dark August night in 1977.
Everything changed after he received a phone call that left him deeply concerned. Moments later, he hurried out of the house and drove away in his pickup truck.
And drove into the night determined to confront whoever had been tormenting his family. But Ron never made it home, because only a short time later,
His truck crashed into a tree on a rural road outside Circleville, killing him instantly, and although authorities ruled it an accident caused by drunk driving,
many people close to the case believed something far more sinister had happened, especially after discovering Ron had fired a single bullet from his handgun before the crash. A detail that raised terrifying questions nobody could answer, because who had he been shooting at on that lonely road, and why did he die moments later?
Before exposing the identity of the anonymous writer, after Ron's death, most people assumed the letters would finally stop, but instead they exploded across Circleville.
Like a disease infecting the entire town, and suddenly school officials, police officers, local business owners, teachers, and ordinary families began receiving
Their own anonymous messages filled with personal secrets, accusations, and threats, all signed by nobody, and the writer's knowledge seemed impossible.
as though they could see into homes and listen through walls, because the letters referenced hidden affairs, financial problems, family disputes, and deeply private details that often turned out to be true, creating an atmosphere where nobody trusted anyone anymore. Neighbors suspected neighbors.
Friendships collapsed, and every mailbox became an object of fear. Then the harassment escalated beyond letters when bizarre threatening signs began appearing along roadsides.
The messages increasingly focused on one local resident, making deeply personal allegations that were displayed publicly for passing drivers to see, because they proved the writer was bold enough to operate openly in the community while remaining invisible. And one terrifying day in 1983,
Mary spotted another offensive sign while driving her school bus route. Furious and humiliated after years of torment, she stopped the bus and walked toward the sign.
intending to tear it down, but when she removed it from the ground, she made a horrifying discovery hidden behind it: a box attached to a string mechanism.
Containing a loaded handgun aimed directly at whoever attempted to remove the sign. A carefully constructed booby-trap that could have easily killed her.
And police quickly determined the weapon's serial number traced back to a man named Paul Freshour, Mary Gillespie's former brother-in-law, immediately making him the prime suspect in one of America's strangest unsolved mysteries. Paul Freshour denied everything, insisting he was being framed.
To Circleville. Yet investigators discovered evidence that seemed devastating, including similarities between his handwriting and the anonymous letters.
Especially because of bitter family tensions connected to Mary and the alleged affair rumors, and despite Paul maintaining his innocence throughout the investigation.
He was ultimately convicted for the booby trap and sentenced to prison. But what happened next transformed the Circleville mystery from a disturbing harassment case
into something almost impossible to explain. Because even while Paul sat behind bars, the anonymous letters continued appearing across town exactly as before. With the same tone, same knowledge, same threatening style, and same obsession with local secrets, creating a terrifying question that still haunts the case decades later. With the same tone, same knowledge, same threatening style, and same obsession with local secrets, creating a terrifying question that still haunts the case decades later.
Because if Paul Freshour was truly the Circleville Letter Writer, how could the letters continue while he was locked inside prison walls?
Even stranger, Paul himself reportedly began receiving anonymous letters during his incarceration, mocking him and claiming authorities would never uncover the real writer.
And according to some accounts, one letter chillingly stated, "Now when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there?"
Words that sounded less like harassment and more like a confession from someone manipulating the entire investigation from behind the scenes. Someone who wanted Paul blamed while they remained free? Over time, the mystery grew darker as more theories emerged. Some residents believed the writer was part of law enforcement, allowing them access to confidential information
and protection from suspicion, while others suspected multiple people were involved in a coordinated campaign of harassment, and a few even believed the writer might have been someone extremely close to the victims.
Someone trusted enough to overhear private conversations and move unnoticed through the community, but no theory ever fully explained all the details.
Because the Circleville letters seemed to contain impossible knowledge appearing at impossible times, and investigators repeatedly found themselves trapped in contradictions.
One of the most disturbing elements of the case was the psychological terror created by the writer's patience, because unlike impulsive criminals driven by rage, this person appeared methodical, calculating, and deeply obsessed with controlling people through fear. They wanted victims constantly anxious, constantly checking their mailboxes. Nobody could escape it. Every conversation felt dangerous, every stranger became suspicious, and every personal secret suddenly seemed vulnerable to exposure.
Reporters from across America eventually descended on Circleville, fascinated by anonymous letters, possible murder.
And as national attention intensified, the writer appeared to enjoy the chaos, continuing to send letters not only to victims, but sometimes taunting authorities with an almost supernatural confidence. And despite extensive forensic analysis, handwriting comparisons, interviews, and years of investigation,
law enforcement never conclusively identified the true author of the letters, leaving the case suspended in uncertainty where rumors flourished endlessly.
Many people continued to focus on one individual because of several pieces of circumstantial evidence, while others argued that the overall case remained incomplete and open to interpretation.
Especially considering the letters that arrived while he was imprisoned. And some investigators privately admitted they were never fully convinced he acted alone.
While others believed the entire town had become so consumed by gossip and suspicion that the real truth was impossible to separate from rumor. Because in Circleville, stories evolved constantly. Memories changed, and fear distorted reality as to physically kill anyone at first, because psychological domination seemed to be the primary goal, exposing secrets, humiliating victims, yet over time the obsession escalated dangerously, eventually leading to Ron Gillespie's mysterious death and the booby-trapped firearm targeting Mary. The writer either lost control or became increasingly emboldened after years of avoiding capture, and that progression from anonymous gossip
to potential murder reveals how terrifyingly dangerous obsession can become when left unchecked.
Not because of graphic violence or massive body counts, but because the case destroys the comforting belief that we truly know the people around us.
Somewhere inside that small Ohio town was a person, or perhaps several people, who quietly monitored neighbors, collected secrets, and manipulated lives.
And the lack of answers makes the story infinitely more disturbing, because unresolved fear lingers longer than solved crimes ever do. There was no dramatic courtroom confession, no shocking final revelation, no detective unmasking the villain under bright interrogation lights.
Only silence, suspicion, and boxes of anonymous letters filled with threats that transformed an ordinary American town into a nightmare of paranoia.
Even today, investigators, journalists, and true crime enthusiasts continue debating who truly wrote the letters, whether Ron Gillespie's death was murder or accident.
Questions remained about whether the person at the center of the investigation had been correctly identified, or whether the true author of the letters had remained unnoticed within the community.
Because the mystery never fully ended, it simply became another dark American legend whispered about whenever discussions turned toward unsolved crimes that refused to die. And perhaps that is exactly what the writer wanted all along. Not merely revenge or exposure, but immortality through fear.
Because as long as the questions remain unanswered, the Circleville Letter Writer continues to exist in the imagination of everyone who hears the story.
A faceless presence hiding somewhere behind typed pages and poisoned secrets, reminding us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters
are not the ones who attack openly, but the ones who sit quietly nearby, watching, listening, and waiting for the perfect moment